Hi guys, welcome back to another video on Next.js 14. This video is very important because I'm going to be talking about an awesome open source tool for building the UI components specifically for documentation, testing, and UI development. And I've opened up its website. You can see that it is used to build UIs without the grunt work. It is not a separate project that we need to build. It is actually being developed while we are working on an actual project. So in React, in Angular, in Vue, in Svelte, in Next.js, while we are building components like the button component, drop downs, checkboxes, we create the stories for all of these components. It helps the QA team, the client, to check out all the components, all the typography, the color scheme that will be used in the project. So whenever you get a chance to work in a big organization, they use such kind of tools. So you must know how to use these tools while you are writing your code. So it requires code understanding to write the stories for your components. So don't get confused because I will be creating a new Next.js project and configure Storybook in that project from scratch step by step. I will be creating new components and then I will be writing the stories against those components and show you how we can run the storybook on a separate URL while we are working or developing on actual project. And you can see that you can go through its website. It provides a lot of things and it supports a lot of technologies that we can configure with, and it is supported by a lot of big companies like the VS Code, or you can say GitHub, Airbnb, BBC. All of these companies use Storybook for documenting their UI components. So first of all, let's create a new Next.js 14 project. I've opened up an empty folder in my VS Code, and in the terminal, I'm gonna be writing a command: create next app at latest space dot, and I will hit enter. And it is going to ask me a few questions. Go with the TypeScript, ESLint, Tailwind, source directory, no, app router, no for default, import, alias. So it's going to take some time to create a new Next.js 14 project. Meanwhile, it is getting created. I just want to show you that I've created a lot of Next.js 14 videos, from the authentication, from building the real applications like the blog, e-commerce, type scripting, and a lot of other topics like the Docker setting up REST APIs in Next.js, web scraping, using AI tools for building Next.js 14 apps. So I have pretty much covered every topic for you guys to become a good Next.js 14 developer. So if you want any kind of development services from me, you can contact me on LinkedIn. I have given the link of my LinkedIn profile in the description of this video. So Next.js 14 project have been created, and you can see that it has generated all of these files and folders for running a proper Next.js 14 project. So I want to create a complex component which I want to write storybook for, and it's going to take me time to write that component myself. Instead, I will be importing the pre-built components, let's say some UI component, let's say a button component or a drop down component. So one awesome library that I can use quickly, I've already created videos on it, how to configure that. So just by writing one single command, I can configure it and install one component for the button, and that is going to contain some kind of complex code for the button that includes sizes, variants, and a lot of other properties included in that button, so that I can show you the real world components storybook examples. So now let's come over here, and inside it I'm simply going to write this, and it is going to go with the default slate CSS variables. Let's go with yes, I don't care about that. Now I'm gonna come down and I'm simply going to copy this particular command, and now I will be adding it like this. So it is going to create a button component in my components folder, and you can see that it has created that, and this is the button component that we can use in any other component. These are the pre-built components from Shadcn, which provides the code for those components which we can customize as well. This is the reason this library is famous too much, that it gives us the code for all the components that it provides. All right, so now for this much components code, I'm going to write storybook for. So let's first configure the storybook in our project now. So I'm gonna come over here. So this is the URL. You can go to this particular URL. I'll give the link of it in the description of this video. So it is saying me that the requirement should be that the project or a Next.js version should be greater than equal to 13.5, and we are using 14. Storybook should be greater than 7.0. Currently we are using version 8, which is fine. So now I simply need to copy this command npx storybook at latest init, and in the terminal I'm going to hit enter and simply write y, and it's going to take some time, so let's wait for it. Before it is getting created, let's go over here. Sometimes we need to go with the automatic configurations by upgrading this particular command, or we can go with the manual migration, but hopefully it's going to go with the automatic migrations and upgradations for setting up the whole storybook, and it requires a lot of packages as well. Currently, if I show you the package.json file, you will see that this contains this much packages, but after it completes the storybook, currently it is analyzing our folder structure, which technology we are using, what is the folder structure we have, and according to that, it is going to generate the files to run the storybook. Storybook is a separate project, you can say, that will be merged inside the same Next.js project. All right, so now it has detected, it has analyzed our folder structure, the technology we are using, and it is installing all the required packages. So the storybook configuration is completed and it has automatically started the project on port 6006. Before actually checking this out, let me show you the package.json file, and it has generated these two scripts, one for running locally, another for building storybook project. And if I go down, you can see that it has generated all of these dependencies for the storybook, which I'm going to be using while writing stories for my component, which I've created from the Shadcn UI library that you can see. This is the button component, but before that, let's go and check that out, the files it has generated. So first of all, it has generated this file, folder.storybook, and inside it has generated these two files, main.ts. It has generated these add-ons. We can add more add-ons by following the documentation of the storybook, and it has added the frameworks that we are using, which is the Next.js, which it detected, and it has added these paths of all the files which we have here in the project, and also it has created this particular folder. It is not required for running storybook for our own component. This is the example components and example stories for the components to help us write our own stories for our own component. And you can see that this is the page.tsx component it has created, and against this we generate the stories file. Like for this particular component, it has generated this stories file like page.stories.ts, and same for others. We can see this is the button component, and against this it has created this button.stories.ts file. This is to run the stories. Currently, if we run the project and see it on the browser, we will see these particular stories will be existing for this component, which is an example components for us to learn from these examples. Okay, so currently we have this preview.ts as well. So let me stop it, and after stopping it, we can run it ourselves as well. So if I go to the package.json, and this is the command, let's run it, npm run storybook, and it should run the project. If we have a pre-built project with a lot of components, with a lot of configurations, then it might throw some kind of error when we initialize storybook with Next.js project. If there is an error, there might be some mismatching versioning. You need to run this command to resolve all those versioning, and after that, when you will run npm run storybook, and it's going to resolve those issues. So currently, let's open up localhost :6006. So you can see that it has generated this configure your project page, and this particular page is the introduction to this project that we have created. These are just introduction. When we build our own project, we have to update our file, which is called configure.mdx, and we can place this file anywhere in our project. So configure.mdx, and you can see that it contains all the information that we have over here displayed. And below this we have an example, the button, header and the page, and these are the components, the button, header and the page. So against these storybooks, when we run the storybook, it detects all the .stories.ts file in the whole project, and against those stories it shows those components over here. For the button, if we click on it, you can see that it has generated the documentation for the button, that what are the different properties this component actually accepts, what we can do with this button, whether we are able to generate the border to this button, we can change the background to this button, we can change the text color, what we can do with that. So all the variations of the button are the part of the documentation which helps QA team and the clients to realize that these are the available options, these are the part of the documentation, and only these variations for this button can be used in the whole project. So one benefit is that all the variations are visible, and sometimes we have not used all the variations in the actual product which is on the production. So the client suggests us that the documentation suggests this color scheme as well. So I want you developers to actually use that color scheme in the real production project. All right, so on click primary label, and we can test that out by changing it. We can change the text from here. For the button, we can choose the background color depending upon how we can configure our component, the actual component which we have built. Okay, small, medium, large, we can change over here. And then these are some options for the documentation, and we can separately go to the primary, secondary, large and small buttons for all the variations which supported by the actual button component. And here it shows us the same kind of properties for primary button only. And if I go to the actions, if I click on it, it's going to show me what happens when I click on it, not the actual but current behavior of this. We can go through all the visual tests, what will happen for these buttons which we need to configure in our stories file, and all that interaction happens with this button. All right, so but we don't need that, it is already written. I'm going to go and I'm going to delete this whole folder which I don't need at all. So after deleting that stories folder, we're gonna go to the main.ts, and currently you can see that there is a path for the stories. So we need to change this path, that we don't have the stories folder exists now. We have this components folder. So what we can do is we can go with this, we can remove it. So what it's going to do, it's going to go back and it's going to check all of the folders and see where are the MDX files. I'm going to show you what are these files. And now we need to also make sure that it detects all the stories.js.jsx and mjs.ts.tsx files exists anywhere in our project. All right, so now I'm going to save it. And here, to avoid any kind of issues, I always try to rerun the project. So currently I'm rerunning the project, it's refreshing, and currently there is no story exists in our project. So currently you can see that, oh no, your storybook is empty, possible reasons why, and it is saying that could not find any stories in your storybook. Now it's time to go ahead and create story for this button component. And after that, I'm going to show you how we can define the colors for our whole application that will be shown separately in this sidebar. And also you can say the icons to be used in the whole project, or the typography, the font styles to be used in the whole project. There is a separate way to define all of these documentation, along with the documenting stories for a separate components like this button component. So let's go and create a new file within this UI folder, just like in the button, actually the file. So I'm going to write button.stories.tsx. All right, and you can see the logo it is showing, it is referring to the stories, and I'm going to stop the project for now. So here, first of all, I'm going to import few things. So I need import type meta, and then I need story obj from at storybook, and then I need to select React. All right, and after that I need to import the actual component, which is the button component, from /button. All right, So it is showing the undeclaration error, which is fine. We are just going to use that. So after this, we are going to import another thing. So import action from at Storybook add-ons actions, which we need to, let's select this and add on actions. All right, so let's go over here and I'm going to define the meta for our component. So the meta is that it is of type button, and inside it, first of all, we need to define the title. On the Storybook web page, we are going to see at the top left corner, this is what we need to use, and that is automatically going to be converted into the arrow drop downs based upon the forward slash which we are going to write over here. So let's define the components. This is going to have an arrow and forward slash, and as a nested option we are going to write UI, and then we can define the button. Okay, and then after that we are going to add the button component, and then we are going to add the tags. This is optional because we want to show the documentation for all the options, all the variation for this button to be shown at the one place as well, which I showed you earlier at the start of the video on the default button component. Okay, so auto docs, and after that we can have the parameters, and then we can define the layout, and this is going to be the centered. So the button is going to be at the center from the vertically and the horizontally as well. Okay, so after parameters we can define argTypes, but before that let's go with that whatever we have written. So if I hover over it, the file should have a default export, which is fine. Now next what we need to do is we need to export this. So export default meta, and then we need to define type story equals to story object, story obj, and then we can define type of button. All right, so after this let's use this particular button. So let's go and check this out. First of all, this button from the Shadcn UI actually gives us a lot of variants, and variants means that it has this default styling, the separate background color, border, separate text, and this is the destructive, which is going to be, I think, the red background. This is the outline, this is going to have a border, secondary, ghost, link, and this button component actually taking these much parameters that we can pass to it. We can pass class name, variant, size as child equals to false, or you can say the props and the reference, and this is how it is rendering out all the data over here. We need to understand how the component is written actually. Okay, even though we write our own component or we are using the component from a library. So in order to use this particular button, let me quickly show you in the app page, and if we want to show you that button, then we need to simply import that button from components button, and this is how it's going to work. We can define like this, and in order to pass the variant, we can simply pass the variant, let's say the default variant. Okay, and it should not be in the object, it should be in the like this. All right, so this is going to show the default, and this is going to be passed as a children. So this button will be having a default styling with the children with this content. So now we are not going to use all the button variants in our app, but we are going to document each and every type of variant button in this stories. All right, this is the benefit of Storybook. Now inside it, I'm going to write export const, and then you can see that the error above meta is removed because we are exporting something. Now I can name anything to it, and it can be anything. So the first variant of this button is the default variant. That's why I've given the name default to it. So default, and after this is going to be of type story equals to this object. Okay, and then we are going to pass some args. So first arg is going to be the variant, and variant is going to be the default, and then we can pass the size. This is going to be the small, and the size is also a property which is receiving over here. You can see that the size, and these are the values. We can pass the default small, large, icon. So I have passed small for this particular thing, and I'm going to show you how we can change it. If user or client or the QA team wants to change the default button size, they can change that as a drop down from the Storybook on the web page as well. Not, it is not going to be fixed, but for that we need to configure few more things within this meta, which I'm gonna do later on. So size SM, and then we can show the by default the disable property is going to be default false. On click action is going to be the default click, so we can write anything over here. So this particular action will be showing the message, this string message in the Storybook web page for on click function. So remember that all these parameters are also configured in this button component over here: class name, variant, size, as child, and the props and the children. So these are all the things you can see as child, and it is also receiving as different values. Okay, so here after the on click, what we can pass is we can pass the children. This is going to be the text of the button. So default button, we can write anything to it, and for testing we can change it from that. And we can also pass the class name. For class names, few classes are already applied for this button, but if we want to append more classes along with this, or if we want to override few of these styles, you can see that this class name is being applied to that component over here, right? So that's why we can pass any CSS or Tailwind CSS properties. So for now I can pass the, let's say, shadow large. So this is going to show the shadow. So let's save it now. I hope there won't be any kind of error. So now I'm going to run the Storybook. So npm run Storybook and hit enter, and let's wait for it. And after refreshing this page, you can see that it is showing components, and the components is coming from here, then UI, then button. And you can see that components, UI, button, and inside this it is showing the docs. Docs is showing the overall view for all the exports of our stories for this particular component. And currently you can see that there is only one default story. That's why it is showing the one default. Docs is being shown up because I've added tag auto docs. If I remove it, it will not be shown up. We can go through separate one by one for each, but currently it is not showing the button properly from the Shadcn. Let's go over here and see what I have done wrong. So story object meta story components. All right, so rather than adding the button, I need to add meta over here. After this, I try to run the project again, npm run Storybook, and let's see, it is building the modules again. So all other properties are being applied, but I think the project is not working with Storybook when we use Tailwind, because the classes which are being used over here are the Tailwind classes. Okay, so in order to fix that, what we need to do is, first of all, we need to load up these utilities within the Storybook. So in order to do that, let's come over here in the preview.ts, and I need to write import dot app globals.css. Let's see if it works. If it doesn't, I have another solution. So let's see, let's refresh, and still it's not working. So one thing we can do is post CSS. I'm going to rename it from MJS to CJS. I'm changing the extension, and I need to write module dot exports equals to config. Now save this file and rerun the Storybook, and now I'm gonna go over here and let's see if it works or not. So it's loading. I'm gonna go to the docs or button. So I'm already in the default. All right, so the styles are being applied from the tailwind. And now if I go to the docs, it's going to show the overall all the properties which are being used for all the exports. Currently there is only one export which is default, so you can see that we have this variant which is default, and the styles which are being applied are belonging to this thing, and I've given the size which is belonging to this. Okay, that's why it is small. I can disable that from here, and I can change the settings. I can have these classes as well from the tailwinds, and you can see that shadow large is being applied. If I remove it, you will carefully see that the shadow is going to get removed, so it's mean tailwind css classes are being applied. Now we have this only one story over here which is being exported. Now let me add further stories for all the variants of this button. So quickly, I hope that you have got an idea how we can do that. So I'm just going to copy paste all the variants, so you can see that this is link, and it is coming from here. So this is the link variant, and then we have the ghost variant. I have changed the ghost from here, ghost button for the children, and also I'm changing the size. Variant is important, that is going to differentiate the different buttons. Then I'm having secondary, then I'm having outline, destructive. So all of these variants I have used. I can modify this particular button from Shadcn and add some more variants if I want, and I can add more sizes as well. All right, so let's save this, and let's see if all of these buttons are shown up within the docs, and it's refreshed, and now you can see that the docs is going to show up all of these buttons with the different styling variants coming from that component for that button. All right, so this is how we can separately check all of these buttons from here by clicking on it, and we can go to the action secondary button, and now you can see that secondary button is clicked and all of its details over here, and this text is coming from here. I've given it inside this action. Okay, and we can run the tests as well. So now let's say that in this variant I've only given this secondary, and the QA or the client who's testing that out is not aware that what are the other values I want to apply. Rather, he might need to go to the docs, and he can go over here and see the destructive online, but I want to show the client that he should be able to click on this drop down and should change this button variant directly from here rather than wandering around over here. Or he might not go to the docs, directly go to the outline, and from here he might go to this click on the drop down. He might want to change the size from here to see how the button looks like. So in order to do that, I'm gonna come over here, and I need to add another property which is called argTypes. So argTypes colon object. Okay, so first of all we need to give the first property that it is expecting, and this is the variant. Where it is gone, yes. So now inside the variant we need to provide the control which is going to be, so I'm using an extension called tab9 AI assistant. It is suggesting me few things. It suggests with the help of an AI, but there is one problem inside it. I think it is in the older version of Storybook, but rather than adding the type, we can directly write select after the control. So I can write control colon, and rather than adding it as an object, I can directly write as a select after this, and then I can add the description, and I can write button variants, and after that I can pass the options. So options, I have all of these options. So default, destructive, and outline secondary. So I have couple of more options, ghost, and then the link. Okay, so these are the things. So let's verify if there is a drop down visible for this. Okay, yes, there is a drop down for all of these things. So you can see that it is secondary, it is ghost, but if I want to change it to destructive, user or QA or the client can directly test this out. So this is quite an important feature we need to add. So let's move it back to the ghost, and we can add some large value over here as well. So for the size, I can directly come over here and I can add the sizes. Select drop down button sizes, default small large icon from just like here. So here you can see that I can go and change the button sizes from here as well. Awesome. So along with the sizes, what we can do is, uh, so we have to go to the stories. So we have further properties. We have the disabled property, on click property. I'm not going to show any of these, but I'm going to add it over here so that I can see the description as well for the on click, for the description, for the children, for the class name. So if I go to the docs, you can see that each of these docs have this description now, so that what it does. So custom Tailwind CSS classes to apply to the button, content to be displayed inside the button. So this is very important, and along with that, control is equals to text. All right, so this is the basic introduction of the Storybook with Next.js 14. There is one thing that is left. If I want to organize all the colors of my application, or all the typography, the font families, or all the icons needed to be used in my application, then I can document those information in Storybook as well. So let's see how we can do that. So first of all, we need to find out some folder structure where we can put those files. So I'm gonna come over here and I can actually create a new folder actually. So let's create stories folder. Okay, I hope that this is going to find this because of this. Okay, this is going to find all of the files. Okay, so now inside it I can create colors.mdx format. Okay, and I've installed the extension for the MDX. You can also install that. It's going to help you indent those files. All right, so here let's go. First of all, I need to import few things. I need to import color palette, color item, and the meta. So you can write this at the top, and after that you can set the title. For the app color, it's going to show up on the left bar on the storyboard, and then I can actually add the color palette and the color item quickly. So these are the stuff I've got from the Storybook real documentation from its own website. For learning purpose, you can go through the documentation of it. And I think you need to spend a couple of days to know what are the things Storybook actually provides. Okay, so let's run this now. npm run Storybook. Now there should be another colored section on the left side, and now you can see that it's showing app because of this, then it's showing colors because of this. And now if I click on the colors, you can see that it is showing the name, theme, color, grayscale, because this is the title I added over here. This is the description, some of the grays, and these are the color variants 1, 2, 3, and these are some documentation for the colors that can be used in our app. Okay, so after this we can add other variants as our want. So let me add some more color items with different variations. So here I've added some more, and again I've got this from the real Storybook documentation for learning purpose, and I'm going to show you what are these. So color item, this is the title, coral, and this is going to show one color at the moment, and you can see this showing one color, and this is showing the color. All right, and let's go. This is showing the secondary, and then it is showing these three colors along with the opacity 0.8, 0.6, 0.3, and that's why it's showing the green, and then with the lines it is getting lighter with low opacity. So we have defined some colors over here. So we have documented all the colors which are being used in our application. So another file which I want to create is, let's say, typography. So let's do that. So typography.mdx. All right, So here inside it, we need to import that. Let's import meta and the typeset. Okay, and then we can add the heading with this hash character, and after that we can add the typeset. So let me add that. So font sizes, these are the type font sizes. This is the font weight, and this is the simple text. So it's going to generate, I think, 3 times text with the different variation, with different font sizes and different font family. So let's see if it generates, and you can see that typography, and you can see this is the title which I've added over here. Typeset, one is the 4em, then 1.7, then 2.9. So this is the one way. Another thing that we can add some code level as well. So let's do that. We can see that all of this will be having the 18 size, font weight 13, content, and then font family is going to be this. So you can see that this is showing as a code, and again go to the Storybook documentation to get to know all of these things. So let's create the icons which we can do over here. So let's add icons.mdx, and inside the icons what we can do is we need to first import few things: meta, icon gallery, icon items, and we can use our own icons as well which we can import. So let's say that one of the most famous icon library is React icons, which we can use. So React icons, which we can install. So let's go over here. So these are the React icons. It has thousands of icons. So let me copy this and install these React icons in my terminal. So here I'm going to use 4 icons from that, and I'm going to show that as a documented icon library in my Storybook. So I have imported these icons from React icons LIA, and then these are the different icons: LIA aligned center solid, LIA aligned justify solid. So let's use that. First of all, let me add the title just like before. So these are the titles, and then I need to use those icons. So let me paste everything which I have. So icon gallery, inside it we can have the icon item, and we can pass the name as well. And inside it I'm using my own icon which I'm expecting to use in my project, and I'm documenting it in Storybook. Okay, so let's refresh, and you can see that it's showing icons. Let's click on that. It's still loading. uh, so let it load. If there is no error, yes. So let's go to the colors, and that's icon. Let's refresh. It's not showing those icons. Actually I need to save this file, it was not saved. Okay, so let's go over here, and you can see that it's showing the different icons, and we can keep on adding the icons for the documentation purpose. And this is the text which we can show along with the icon over here. Alright, so this was the tutorial for beginners, how to configure Storybook in Next.js 14 project using Tailwindcss, and we can write a lot of documentation libraries on the Storybook using different stories needs to be exported. And also I've shown you how we can document the colors, icons, typography. So if you want to know more about Storybook, go ahead and see the documentation. There are a lot of cool stuff inside it. If you have liked my video, do subscribe my channel, like this video, comment below if you have any question. I'm gonna create more videos on Next.js 14 on different topics. So till then, thank you so much for watching. See you guys in the next video.